Sandong, the largest cave on our planet. This cave is so massive that it has a completely self-sustaining ecosystem with its own climate conditions. Hundreds of meters underground, the clouds you're used to seeing in the sky form inside this cave.
Beneath Vietnam's Phong NHA Key Bang forest, scientists just opened a sealed cave so vast it breathes, so unnatural it breaks physics.
It's not just a cave. It's an actual world in Vietnam.
And what they found inside has left the entire scientific community speechless.
This is the world's biggest cave. The rest of this stuff is just building up to it. That is amazing. That's 1.5 kilometers away. That is huge.
Floating stones, ancient symbols that predate Mesopotamia, and a rhythmic signal.
This limestone is the oldest limestone in Southeast Asia. It is more than 400 million years old.
But the most disturbing part, one creature stared straight into the camera and blinked. The strange discovery. For decades, scientists believed Vietnam's Phong NHA K Bang region had already surrendered all its secrets. After all, this same jungle hides Hang Son Doong, the world's largest cave. So enormous it can hold a 40-story skyscraper and has its own internal clouds. No one expected lightning to strike twice, but in early mapping missions of 2023, a geological team noticed something that froze every expert staring at the satellite screen. A massive hollow chamber, deeper and wider than anything previously documented, sitting directly underneath untouched rainforest. The void was so large that LiDAR scanners glitched on the first pass, mistaking the empty space for a software error. What made it even stranger was the shape. Most caves form through millions of years of water erosion, but this chamber showed perfectly rounded corridors, uniform symmetry, and a bizarre echoing pattern whenever seismic waves passed through. A senior geophysicist described it as nature whispering that something is wrong. And that triggered immediate expedition planning. The entrance wasn't easy. It had been sealed by a chain of prehistoric rock falls, meaning no human had ever stepped inside. Local villagers said the area was cursed, claiming animals avoided the region, and that birds flying over it always changed direction, an odd behavior later confirmed in a 2-week drone survey. Thermal cameras also showed something even more puzzling. The sealed cave radiated heat from within, even though no sunlight, magma, or geothermal source was documented there. When the team finally broke through into the first chamber, the temperature dropped by more than 15 degrees in seconds. Yet tiny droplets of warm mist were rising from the floor, like the cave was breathing. The echo inside didn't match its size. The acoustics behaved like the chamber was partially hollowed by something deeper, something pulling sound away instead of bouncing it back. Researchers kept whispering about the possibility of a dual-layer cave system, a rare geological formation in which two ancient cave systems collide. But the measurements didn't line up. This chamber was simply too perfect, too symmetrical, too engineered. And then came the discovery that pushed the mystery to the next level. Sensors placed near the back wall detected rhythmic tremors, not random like small quakes, but steady, occurring every 26 minutes down to the second. Not a single expert could explain it. Whatever was deeper inside wasn't quiet, it was active. A hidden world with its own skies. The moment the team stepped beyond the initial cavity, it felt less like a cave and more like a world sealed off from evolution itself. Light pierced through jagged openings in the ceiling, forming natural skylights over an impossible landscape. An entire underground rainforest, complete with clouds forming mid-air and mist hovering above moss-covered rock. Scientists immediately realized they had stumbled upon a self-contained biosphere, a cave that not only traps humidity, but generates its own weather. Rain was literally falling inside. But what turned excitement into disbelief was the flora. Ferns the size of SUVs grew alongside translucent fungi that glowed faintly blue, even under daylight. According to Dr. Le Thi Minh, a Vietnamese botanist on site, over 40% of the plant life sampled showed no genetic match to anything currently cataloged. One of the strangest was a vine that snapped shut like a trap when disturbed, its behavior more animal than plant. And then there were the sounds. In the distance, echoing through the fog, came a low rumbling like thunder, but with no storm. Biologists theorized it could be subterranean rivers or collapsed chambers, until drone footage revealed something else: the existence of moving fog walls that advanced in patterns, ignoring wind direction or terrain. Inside these rolling fog banks, radar lost function and temperature sensors shorted out. Scientists called them ghost fronts. They couldn't explain them. The wildlife, too, belonged to no field guide. Cave spiders with metallic exoskeletons, eyeless lizards that swam like fish through wet soil, and crustaceans with hexagonal shells that refracted light like crystals. More than one creature exhibited bioluminescence triggered not by darkness, but by motion, lighting up in ripple effects whenever something passed near. And at the center of it all was a lake, calm, still. But what stunned the researchers was its unearthly geometry, a perfect oval rimmed with obsidian-like stones that rang like bells when tapped. The water itself was warm, clear, and dense. Tests showed it held minerals only found near hydrothermal vents, the kind that exist miles beneath the sea floor. That shouldn't have been possible. Not in inland Vietnam. Not at this altitude. Still, no one could answer one question. How did this ecosystem survive sealed for thousands of years and thrive? The answer, as they soon found out in the next chamber, was even more unnatural. The chamber where physics starts to break. As the team pushed past the steaming mineral wall at the edge of the lake, they entered a corridor that didn't feel like it belonged to Earth. The rock formations suddenly shifted from the familiar smooth limestone of Sundung to a darker metallic stone that geologists on site initially misidentified as basalt. But the structure was too pure, 97% uniform, almost like manufactured alloy. The walls weren't jagged or eroded, they were curved, arcing inward as if shaped by extreme pressure or intense heat. Yet there were no burn marks, no melt lines, no signs of volcanic activity. And then they noticed the floor. Small, coin-sized stones floated several centimeters above the ground, suspended perfectly still. No vibration, no wobble, just hanging there as though gravity had stopped caring. When researchers tried to pick one up, it resisted touch, pushing back with a soft magnetic force despite not containing any measurable iron. A physicist from Hanoi University whispered, "This shouldn't exist. This breaks everything." The deeper they moved, the stranger it became. Stalactites didn't point downward. Some pointed sideways, others spiraled like corkscrews, defying natural drip patterns formed by water. Even more disturbing was the discovery of thin, crystalline sheets embedded in the walls that pulsed faintly when exposed to sound, almost like they were reacting to human voices. When an engineer struck one gently with a metal probe, it emitted a pure ringing note that seemed to echo from beneath the floor. But nothing was more unnerving than the chamber's heartbeat. Sensors placed along the corridor detected pulses coming from deep within the rock, steady, rhythmic, repeating every 42 minutes, identical to the earlier tremor cycle but much stronger. Not seismic, not mechanical, something else. The kind of signal that doesn't occur naturally in geology. And then came the anomaly that sent the entire expedition into panic. A section of the wall was warm, almost hot, and it wasn't rock at all. It was hollow metal, smooth as ceramic, curved with deliberate symmetry. Every attempt to drill it failed. Even diamond bits dulled instantly. Suddenly, the theory no one dared speak aloud became impossible to ignore. This chamber wasn't formed by nature at all. Someone, or something, built part of it. The symbols, the silence, and the signal that shouldn't exist. The team was preparing to retreat. They had already documented anomalies that defied geology, biology, and physics. But just before exiting the corridor where the metal wall was found, a geologist tripped over something partially buried beneath centuries of sediment. A circular stone slab etched with markings, not random scratches, but deliberate carvings. What made everyone stop breathing was this. The symbols weren't Vietnamese. They weren't Sanskrit. They weren't from any local hill tribe or ancient dynasty. When translated using multi-language symbol-matching software, a few resembled Proto-Elamite, a script so old and undeciphered it predates most known writing systems. The slab was dated, tentatively, to over 12,000 years ago, placing it in the late Pleistocene. That would make it twice as old as Mesopotamia, and it was underground. Even stranger, when the slab was lifted, researchers found what they described as a cavity of absolute silence beneath it. Sound recorders picked up nothing inside. No echo, no ambient vibration, not even electromagnetic interference. It was as if the laws of acoustics didn't exist within that space. Then came the biggest shock. When they scanned the pit below the slab with ground-penetrating radar, they detected something geometric, not natural, not random, but sharp-edged. Hexagonal chambers, stacked like a honeycomb, spiraling downward beyond the device's range. At the same moment, the seismic sensors placed earlier in the expedition began to spike. But it wasn't an earthquake. It was a signal, a low-frequency pulse with repeating intervals, every 4 minutes and 37 seconds, matching no known natural process. The rhythm was consistent, deliberate, and undetectable before the slab was moved. One researcher whispered, "It's like we flipped a switch." That night, the team's radios experienced interference for the first time since arrival. Some started recording static patterns that, when analyzed later, weren't random at all. In spectrogram format, they formed wave patterns eerily similar to ancient glyphs found in the Sahara's lost cave art, thousands of kilometers away. Vietnamese officials quietly sealed the site weeks later. No new updates, no academic releases. But according to a leaked internal memo dated March 2025, one more chamber remains unopened, and it's humming. The global match, this isn't the only one. Just when the Vietnamese team thought they were dealing with a one-of-a-kind geological anomaly, a separate discovery flipped the entire theory on its head. A research team from Norway, analyzing satellite thermal data near the Arctic Circle in early 2025, found an identical heat pulse signature, the same precise interval of 4 minutes and 37 seconds, rising from beneath a sealed ice cavern near Svalbard, thousands of miles away. No earthquakes, no geothermal activity, just a signal, perfectly matching the one detected beneath Vietnam's cave. Scientists from both countries independently ran time-coded seismic comparisons, only to find something even more terrifying. The pulses weren't just similar, they were synchronized. The Vietnamese cave and the Arctic site were emitting rhythmic vibrations at the exact same time, down to the millisecond. Even accounting for time zones, Earth rotation, and equipment delay, the pattern was consistent. It was as if both underground systems were communicating, or were being activated by something external. That's when an older, mostly forgotten anomaly came back into focus. In 1987, a Soviet drilling project in the Kola Peninsula reported the Well-to-Hell incident, a borehole that reached over 12 kilometers deep and picked up bizarre sounds, rising temperatures, and equipment failure. It was dismissed as a myth, but now, the archived audio from that expedition was run through modern frequency analysis software and compared to the Vietnam and Arctic pulses. The match was exact. All three signals, decades and continents apart, share an audio fingerprint unlike any naturally occurring phenomenon on Earth. Not volcanic, not tectonic, not man-made. The data is now under review by astrophysics teams who are cross-checking it against radio bursts logged by SETI arrays. Early leaks suggest a partial correlation. One researcher, speaking anonymously, said the timing and design of the hexagonal chamber beneath the Vietnamese slab bore resemblance to neutrino resonance patterns, the kind predicted by quantum physicists but never observed in nature. Until now. Which leads to a new theory quietly circling among international teams. What if these caves weren't built to trap something in, but to receive something coming. The eyes that were already watching. After the signal synchronization between Vietnam and the Arctic sites was confirmed, the Vietnamese team shifted their focus back to the upper chambers, areas previously considered biologically safe. But what they missed during the first descent was now staring them in the face. Hundreds of tiny circular nests embedded in the moist upper cave walls. They weren't bird nests. They weren't made of twigs or soil. These were structured from a waxy, protein-based compound that didn't match any known animal in the region. When samples were rushed to Hanoi for sequencing, the results stunned the biologists. The material was organic, highly ordered, and genetically closest to a group of ancient subterranean arthropods, but with sequences that included non-coding regions never before recorded in terrestrial species. In simpler terms, it was a life form Earth had no category for. Then came the bigger problem. The nests weren't abandoned. Motion-activated cameras captured footage between midnight and 3 a.m. local time, revealing creatures roughly the size of a human hand, translucent with reflective plates across their dorsal sides, crawling silently along the vertical walls. Their movement was perfectly synchronized, almost as if following a choreographed grid. They avoided light. They avoided sound. But in one captured frame, a single creature stopped directly in front of the lens and tilted its head. The most disturbing part? It had a single central eye. No visible mouth, no limbs, just fibrous extensions trailing behind it like underwater jellyfish. And in that eye was a perfectly hexagonal pupil, the same geometric pattern seen in the buried Vietnamese slab and the subterranean chamber maps. One zoologist reviewing the footage said it best, "They weren't just reacting to us, they were studying us." Even more unsettling, follow-up scans of the chamber 3 days later showed the nests had doubled in number, suggesting rapid reproduction or migration from deeper layers. And then the final blow. On the outer surface of the expedition's landing platform, scientists found tiny smears of the waxy material on the outside of their equipment, meaning whatever these things were, they had already made it to the surface. Quietly, without triggering a single sensor. The mind effect, people changed after leaving the cave. Weeks after the team returned from the Vietnam site, something started to go wrong, not with the equipment, but with the people. Initially, it was brushed off as stress. A few team members reported experiencing distorted time perception, brief hallucinations, and auditory confusion. One described hearing voices echoing from rooms that were silent. Another swore his watch had skipped 20 minutes, even though the digital timestamp showed nothing wrong. But the incidents weren't isolated. After routine health checks, 3 members were pulled from rotation entirely after neurological scans revealed unusual electrical activity in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, areas of the brain responsible for memory and reasoning. The scans showed micropulses, too faint to trigger seizures, but strong enough to disrupt circadian rhythms, short-term memory, and spatial orientation. The common thread? All 3 had spent extended time near the hexagonal chamber and the breathing wall. One researcher developed a condition where he began drawing perfect geometric patterns in his sleep. Dozens of sheets filled with spirals, hexagons, and nested fractals, all matching the acoustic resonance maps from the crystal sheets found inside the cave. He couldn't remember making them. Then came the language anomaly. A female biologist began speaking words in her sleep, not gibberish but phonetically structured phrases. Linguists were brought in. The sounds shared traits with extinct proto-languages from Central Asia, including glottal stops and tonal shifts found in languages that hadn't been spoken for thousands of years. When she woke, she had no memory of it. But the most disturbing case was the youngest technician on the team, who had only entered the outer cave. During a follow-up psychological evaluation, he described a recurring dream, standing inside a cavern of smooth black stone, watching a light pulse from beneath the ground, syncing with his heartbeat. When shown an artist's impression of the Arctic signal chamber, something he'd never seen, he went pale. "That's it," he said. That's exactly what I saw. A leaked report from the Vietnamese Ministry of Health quietly recommended long-term monitoring of all expedition members, citing possible non-ionizing neurological interference of unknown origin. The final page of the report was redacted, but a handwritten note remained visible. The cave changes you, even after you leave it. What else is still hidden beneath our feet? Subscribe now and tell us, what do you think is waking up?